On today's Minute of the Apes, I do my crazy cross-eyed tricks.
They greenlit the sequel without a story in mind. They just wanted to equal an unexpected gold mine. He said, oh no, as Heston said, I got to go. These are just some of the facts you ought to know as we go. Beneath the Minute of the Apes. Beneath the Minute of the Apes. Beneath the Minute of the Apes.
The only good human is a dead human.
Hello and welcome to Minute of the Apes, the daily podcast where we do more than talk about Minute of the Apes. We watch Richard
cross the eye.
Crossing his eyes every which way.
So here's what you do. So can you cross your eyes? Okay, cross your eyes. Now all you do is you cross your eyes and then you intentionally, exactly, that's it. You look the other direction. So you cross them and then you just decide to look over there. And then you cross them, and then you decide to look over there. And then you can do the same thing down below. See?
So I teased you that I'm afraid of crossing my eyes, and I'm not going to get, because we're going to talk Minute of the Apes, but I have to say this. My Aunt Betty, rest her soul, she's been gone a long time, saw me and my cousin one day crossing our eyes, and she walked in, boy, you better stop it now. Now, here's what you have to know about Aunt Betty. Aunt Betty had a very bad lazy eye. And it tilted towards the end of her nose. And all of a sudden, she looked at me and she walked up and she treated me like I was her angel. She said, little boy, how do you think this happened? And at that point, she put it up there. I was like, ah! And so I never, ever crossed my eyes again. I was like, no.
She had a good sense of humor with
she
that
was
one.
a
That's
hoot.
fantastic.
God, I love that lady. I miss her. All right, so we are on to Minute 57. Let's get away from cross-eyed talk. Sean, tell us what's going on.
All right, we're starting Minute 57 with a shot at the back of Nova's head as she drinks water, and it ends with Brent panting as he holds the church door.
Here it comes in 3, 2.
Put my hands round her throat. Off! Hold her throat. She dies. Get out! Get out of my head!
All right, as of Minute 57, we have 3 living humans, 4 dead humans, 1 dead ape, a shooting of apes, and a gaggle of humans. Okay, so put my hands around her throat?
Okay, so let's get into that. What does this? Why don't you do this? Because I think in that minute, and please understand, we add the minutes in post. We aren't listening to them here right now. In this minute, Brent does a lot of talking. Obviously, something's happening in his head, and he's reciting thoughts that he's having. We don't know where these thoughts are coming from. Can you just read the minute to us so we have a basis to go from?
Okay, so I will read you what he says.
Okay.
And then I can tell you more about what the script specifically says was here. He says, put my hands round her throat, off, hold her throat down in the water till she dies. Then there's a bit of a pause, and he says, get out of my head.
Okay. My natural question, I'm not even going to let you have a thought about it. What did you think at this point?
First of all, I was thinking, who dictates all their actions? I'm going to drink my beer now. I have swallowed my beer. That's just kind of strange. It's almost as if the writers couldn't think of a better way to show
mind control.
The internal conflict rather than have him actually speak it out loud. Because, what does off mean when he just says off?
I wondered at this moment, and I know that you've watched this week's minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to jump ahead, but we know where this is going. The majority of the people that listen know where this is going. I kind of couldn't help but wonder why they didn't, from a sound design standpoint, have whispering voices that maybe we couldn't even hear the voices. Just like, something like
some
that.
ASMR people very happy.
Yeah. But why not do it to where we can get the conflict that he's hearing something? And at that point,
And, he starts looking around for where the voices are coming from.
And we've not revealed that whether it's from the water or from somewhere else at this point.
Right.
He's hearing.
It's unknown.
It's just a very odd choice because you're right. It comes off of why is he describing this action?
Yeah.
So, if you're at home listening, you got to hear the dialogue. What happened was Nova's drinking water. Brent takes his hands, puts them around her throat, shoves her whole head into the water. Mm-hmm. We do get a shot of her face in the water,
which is a cool shot.
It's not super long, but it is a nicely lit shot.
Even though it's very clean water.
It's very clean water underneath it, and it very brightly lit up above in this darkened cavern.
I want a new
which I could.
Shot.
She struggles a little bit, tries to grab at his hands. He eventually pulls back, and during this time, we hear this dialogue. And then as he pulls back, he utters that phrase, get out of my head.
And by the way, during this whole thing, Brent's wound is looking more and more fake, like it's just an actual Band-Aid that they put on there.
It's like
for a bullet wound, it's just horribly.
It's just a big blob of on there. I saw the same thing. So going back to the reverse shot of her face, and it's a very cool idea that we're getting the struggle and that she's not. I don't know how you could be passive in this, but she's not passive. She's alarmed. Her eyes are open. She's scared.
Sorry, her hair's in her face at this particular. I had to freeze frame it, but that's kind of.
But all I could think was, and we talked about this before, one of my favorite films of all time, Jaws, the sequence where they are with the head pops out of the boat was shot in a swimming pool, and they poured milk into it to make it look a little thicker and a little cloudy.
Yeah.
I wish because it is, even the backlight on that is so crystal clear. I wish they'd just done something.
You put some
just to make it look a little more. Yeah,
it's a little jarring to me when it's very clear.
It was very clean. It was very clean. We've now moved away from this dark fountain in the cavern, and we're now in a small little wading pool, shooting up while her face is being ducked into.
Exactly, and I want her to look up and go, "Bitch, I have an eye infection now. You put it in this
you
shit."
Gave me pink eye.
But I actually did like this change of showing this intensity.
I do too.
They did a couple of tights on Brent as his head kind of scanner shakes again to kind of give us this idea that he's not who he is.
Mm-hmm.
I outside of the dialogue and the moment kind of coming out of nowhere, like what is happening here? Is he being possessed? Is he what's going on?
Is there a hallucinogen in the water?
I can tell you what they had set up in the script for
Please
this.
do.
In the script, I had finished when saying Brent looks at her and slowly reaches his hands to her head. As though against his will, he ducks her head into the cool, splashing water. She tries to bring her head up. He doesn't actually push it down. He merely continues holding it in the water. We track in. This is what it's interesting. The two images, one real and one reflected in the water of the fountain, depict the convulsive mental struggle between an outer and inner force.
That would have been interesting.
Absolutely.
His reflected face, forcing Nova's head into the water, is that of himself, distorted in the visage of a monster, a demented rabid animal with bared teeth and glaring eyes. His real face, looking at his image, is full of pity, horror, and astonishment.
Horror or horror?
Horror.
Oh,
the alternation of the two images depicts the conflict between the two forces. The outer force is saying, put my hands around her throat, hold her head down in the water until she dies. And the inner force is saying, take my hands off her throat, get out of my head. What Brent grunts and grasps out as both forces tangle for possession is. So these two lines that put my hands around her throat, hold her head down in the water till she dies, take my hands off her throat, get out of my head. It sounds like they took those two pieces of dialogue and merged them together for what he says. Now, the script does have him say, put my hands off, round her throat, hold her throat, get out of my head, down in the water till she dies. So he did have dialogue that's similar to what he says, but the dialogue he says sounds like a mashup of the two inner and outer forces talking
It
to each
sounds
other.
like what they'd originally intended, if I'm understanding you correctly, is to almost have a Gollum-like
That's what I was
moment
gonna say.
where it's
That-
back and forth, a
that
head
scene-
spinning
Right.
and talking to itself. That could have been interesting.
Do you think
it would have made more sense?
Do you think because of the construction of the size of the fountain, they weren't able to do that kind of dual image because her head takes up the entire fountain?
That may be part of it.
Probably.
They got there, and that gets to the point that, if you can't do that, I sure wish somebody would have said to them again, put the whispery voices or do something, because it doesn't. this is what I think about a film like this. After so many years, we as fans have watched it so many times, and I've watched it so many times. I made excuses for this moment because I know what's going on, and I get it. But if you put yourself in Sean's shoes as the first time viewer, that first time it's not done clearly, and you're a little
Right.
confused by what's happening. So therefore, I wish they had done something like Phantom Voices or anything. Again, if you've got the lights, in the tunnels kind of flicking around, he can't get a grasp on what reality is, and he's choking her. That at least makes more sense than him going cuckoo and talking about what he's doing.
Right, because this has not been part of his character at all. Like,
No.
it comes completely out of nowhere. So the holding her head under the water only lasts about 14 seconds. So we know that it wasn't an extremely long period of time. When his hands are still around his throat, but he kind of still managed to pull her out, like a combination of her being able to rise, but him half giving up, but not really giving up.
Yeah, and as soon as she gets out of the water, she doesn't run away or anything. She just hangs out with Brent.
It says, with a Herculean physical effort, he wrenches his hands free of her throat and stares appalled at Nova, whose eyes, when her coughing and gagging have subsided, stare back at him in piteous bewilderment.
Okay, Herculean effort to pull himself aside. I honestly don't see that. He just all of a sudden stops. I
Yeah.
wish he'd stumbled away, like he really tried, and he's shaking and terrified of what's happening. Now, then I do think she looks at him with an odd pity, and what I started thinking was, is she longing for Taylor? Because even though Taylor was wanting lots of loving and was a complete jackass, he never drowned her.
That's true.
At least that was a more loving relationship. What we got now, Uh-oh, y'all
The
are
way
watching video over there.
With the way she whipped her hair back.
Yeah, I said
She's hot when she
14
whips her
seconds,
hair
but I
back.
had the timestamp a little bit wrong. It was 14 seconds in to 28 seconds is when she had her underwater. She gets up. We now have the shot of him kind of in the background with her kind of coughing and gagging just a little bit. And again, her makeup is fantastic. I know she just got out of this pool of water, but she looks
Cesspool.
gorgeous.
She does look great, but I will say that complete credit to her for the choice of the husky she lets out as she's trying to breathe. Oh my God. I was like, oh, Nova, I feel your watery pain.
So he'd backed up behind her, and then when she finally kind of turns toward him, he's moved further screen right to kind of hide almost. She doesn't seem to like...
Did she just sneeze there? What'd she do?
She's put her hand to her face.
Yeah, she put her hand over her face.
It's always a weird thing when you watch a film without the sound, because that really
Looked like a
without
sneeze?
It looked like she sneezed, and then it looks like he sneezes in response.
I guess she coughed in this moment
Yeah,
again real
probably
quick
did.
because she gets back up to look at him again. She looks confused, but she doesn't seem scared of him.
She doesn't seem upset at all.
I would be frightened of him, and she's like, "I'm still just going to stay here."
Yeah.
And the ugly things we say to people we love when we're upset with them, and that we don't ever mean. I could never be married to Linda Harrison, because if she ever looked at me like that, I'd be like, "Don't you go Nova on me! Don't you do it!"
Nova.
So then we kind of
We get the most awkward way to get him into the church, slowly walking backwards.
Again, okay, so we know you've seen the film, but let's describe what happens. All of a sudden, as he's had his Herculean effort to let go, he
Right.
begins to. It's not even a stumble. There's nothing pulling him. So he's commenting about her hands around her neck. Why doesn't he comment here of can't stop walking backwards? It's just all of a sudden he begins walking backwards, and he gets to the door, and it's the weirdest, most awkward thing in the world.
I mean, it feels like he to some level he's trying to get away from, I guess, his shame of what he did with Nova. That's what I took it as with him backing up towards the doors.
Okay.
But it's just a way to get him to the door.
Here's a great option. Although voices have been going nuts, he pulls himself away, and he's like, "What have I done?" And then a whispering voice says, "Come inside. It'll be okay." Or anything like that that gets him to the door.
To give Nova some motivation, maybe she runs in fear into there, and he's going after her.
There you go. Anything like that is better than this weird
Backwards, stumbling walk.
It's like it literally looks like they shot it forwards and
then
reversed the
reversed a
film.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah, he stumbles back. We kind of get him. He pushes up against the I guess the right side door. And I thought it was just so funny. So he backs up into the door. He falls back into it, and then he's like, "I'm just going to shut the door." From Nova?
Yeah.
Like, it was like, why are you shutting the door? It didn't make any sense.
He didn't want to let the air conditioning out.
The script destruction, The script in direction says he is backed against the huge double door, which, for perfectly good reason, is not locked. The two half doors swing open behind him. He forces himself back over the dark threshold, stops